Hello, I'm Matt Reardon, and thanks for watching this Wednesday afternoon, May 17th, West Weather Update brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. This video coming out a little bit earlier, publishing it earlier today as I'm on vacation, but nonetheless, there are some stories I wanted to cover across the West region as regards to the weather. One of them we're seeing right here as this warmth has built into the region through this past weekend, over the last few days here. It's caused some wildfires, really up in Canada, which was really the maximum of some of the temperature anomalies. They were right under that highly anomalous ridge we talked about last week. If you think about it, some of the cities that saw some of those high temperatures, at least relative to average this weekend in the U.S., were Seattle, Portland, folks closer to that Canadian border, closer to that epicenter of that highly anomalous ridge. And unfortunately, that sparked quite a number of wildfires up in Alberta, British Columbia. You can see that smoke moving out of Canada here, spinning around this low pressure system here up in northern Canada, and then even getting pushed and blown over the Midwest of the U.S. This satellite loop was recorded yesterday, May 16th, Tuesday. But today, this smoke has extended further south, and I'm actually recording this video here in central Illinois. This smoke is now sitting outside my house, and it almost looks like it's overcast. It's a clear sunny day here otherwise, but the kind of overcast, smoky smoke blowing in, for lack of a better term, from Canada is impacting us all the way over here in Illinois from weather that's hundreds of miles away. Just interesting to see, and it's a crazy satellite loop. The result of that, what we saw over the last 7 days, high temperatures, really anomalous temperatures moving up into central and northern Canada here, helping to spark those wildfires. We talked about Seattle, Portland, some areas out west dealing with those high temperatures, and then areas further to the south a bit more seasonal. If we jump ahead to the current picture, weather across the west, this is looking at the current all hazards map from NOAA, valid as of this afternoon here, early afternoon in the west. These kind of gray advisories you see here, those are air quality alerts actually related to that smoke from those wildfires. The impact's widespread from Illinois to Montana, Washington, all the way up into Canada, tying that back all the way back to that ridge we were talking about last week, building into the area. In fact, if we jump over and look at the current satellite imagery across really the northern half of the West region, we can see the smoke coming out of Canada, prompting those smoke advisories here in Montana and eastern Washington. Some other things we can note just from looking at this map. If you see these little pockets of clouds in here, those are some afternoon showers and storms getting underway across Idaho, parts of eastern Oregon, even parts of Nevada and Utah. We talked about last week how some lingering upper level troughing weakening throughout the weekend into early this week could help kick off some of these afternoon showers and storms. We've seen some of them. They've been pretty weak. There hasn't been these kind of significant rain totals out of them. But folks under some of these light rain showers in the Snake River Valley seeing some precipitation today. And it wouldn't shock me if some of the storms and clouds coming off the elevation here in eastern Oregon kind of precipitate into the Treasure Valley here, and they get some precip out of this as well. Like I said, not too significant if we just look over the last 5-day precipitation totals. In some of the mountainous areas here, sure, you have precipitation amounts getting up closer to an inch, but largely under a half inch, perhaps even less in some of these arable regions across the Intermountain West. If we look closely at Arizona, this is going to be an important point when we look out ahead to the forecast, because we see kind of a similar pattern. You'll notice that a lot of the precip confined to the eastern or northeastern part of the state, really into the higher elevations, 2,000 feet plus in Arizona, not quite making it into the lower Colorado River Valley, save for some drizzle. Can't rule out that some of these showers got into the river valleys here. The Gila River, really the Gila River basin up in the upper elevations has gotten quite a bit of rainfall. There's flood warnings associated with that. This can't hurt the water situation on the Colorado River. Now all of it kind of coming all at once, but nonetheless improving the situation there on top of the snow melt that we've been talking about really all spring. Jump ahead, let's look out into the forecast. I'll make this ECMWF, this is the European model forecast, valid as of Wednesday afternoon here. There's some of those lingering Intermountain West showers we talked about, really kind of confined to the northern and eastern part of Arizona. And you'll notice kind of still confined to some of these upper elevations, leaving the Snake River Valley clear of widespread significant precipitation, just a matter of who lucks out and gets a storm coming off the mountains and drifting over their acreage in a situation like this. As I take this forward into Thursday, afternoon storms weakening on Thursday, as those upper level troughing, lower heights kind of work themselves out of the area. Let's come through the day Friday, not a major change, weakening in that shower activity over the Intermountain West. Temperatures warming up a bit here across the west. At the same time, we'll take a look at the specific temperature forecast in just a few slides here. As I take this through Saturday and Sunday, not a huge change, perhaps some precipitation into, again, that eastern, northeastern part of Arizona. We do have something of a weather maker trying to sneak into the area Sunday evening or Sunday PM. And it's actually hard to see here, but you'll notice that a small low pressure system made its way into British Columbia, far northwest Washington. Can't rule out some showers perhaps getting into the Willamette Valley as this comes through Sunday evening or even Monday, but not expecting notable precipitation out of this. There'd need to be a big shift in the forecast for something like that to occur. But we still, into next week, see some of these lingering Intermountain West afternoon showers, perhaps storm activity. Again, not really too affecting on some of these major agricultural areas, aside from perhaps some areas in western Nevada, which could see some afternoon storm activity, which looks similar kind of to our monsoon that we get typically later in summer, but this is a bit different of a pattern, and I'll talk about that in just a second. As we go through Tuesday and Wednesday, that precipitation focusing more on the southern region here. You'll notice Nevada, Utah, getting into parts of Arizona late week. This is all the way out now into Wednesday, May 24th of next week, so I'll stop it there, and we'll switch into a different look at the forecast. If we sum up the next 7 days of precip that we just looked at, the 7-day precipitation anomalies from the ECMWF, dry across much of the northern region of the Intermountain West, those kind of daily shower chances, not bringing a ton of significant precip. We talked about that just looking at the last 5-day totals. There wasn't really these big bullseye precipitation. But one area that is seeing anomalous precipitation is the desert southwest in terms of eastern Arizona, parts of New Mexico, Colorado, southern Utah, a large area which drains into the Colorado River. Now, some of these showers and storms struggling to actually get into the lower Colorado River Valley itself. We've seen that kind of play out routinely, hard to get these storms to drift west. I think that continues, and we don't see some significant storms moving into parts of Yuma or the Imperial County, where sometimes we get these severe thunderstorms. Not seeing a huge risk for that. There is a low risk for that. Sometimes a storm can spin up on the mountains, right, and just take a serendipitous track westward and impact areas like that along an outflow boundary, but not something we can confidently, definitively forecast something 7 days in advance like that. As far as the temperature story going forward, perhaps for California, today might be Wednesday here, May 17th, might be one of the hotter days in the forecast. Certainly seeing a lot of heat building into the Pacific Northwest and really kind of across the whole western region, save for some areas underneath that precipitation in Arizona and New Mexico. So I take this through Thursday, similar story, even more heat building into eastern Washington and eastern Oregon, but still warm in the Willamette Valley of Oregon, Seattle, through the Central Valley, which continues to push those daytime high temperatures into the mid or even upper 90s here in mid-May. Similar story Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You'll notice slowly as that next weather maker that I talked about coming toward Washington, coming toward British Columbia, starts to bring the temperatures down finally in kind of that Pacific Northwest metro area along the Willamette and the SeaTac area. That heat starting to shift east now, more focused on the Snake River Valley here on Sunday. So that's something to note. California, not a major change, perhaps not quite seeing the same daytime high temperatures this weekend that we're going to see really here Wednesday and Thursday, but nonetheless warm, high temperatures in the 90s across the Central Valley. By Monday, that front comes through Washington and Oregon, cools temperatures down finally. This will probably be a break from what has felt like a warm stretch of weather here, but being confined north, coming through British Columbia and Washington, California, Nevada, Utah, areas to the south, not a major change in that temperature pattern going out into next week on Monday or Tuesday. That takes us out about 6 days here. That is the story. If we look, in total, it's going to be quite warm across the west, save for some of these areas that are under that precipitation in New Mexico or Arizona. And despite anything, there is that pattern shift in Washington and Oregon Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday in temperatures. Now, these warm temperatures, we've been talking about snowmelt concerns all year. The snowmelt beneficial, I think, for the Colorado River Valley, beneficial in some ways for the Snake River Valley, although we have seen some flooding there as well, which is worth mentioning. But California, as good as it is to have a good water year that we just have, we don't want to see these flooding concerns. In fact, NOAA releases this map of billion-dollar U.S. weather disasters. They update it monthly, and we have now added another billion-dollar weather disaster in the United States in the year of 2023, and it's the California flooding, which is really ongoing January to March. But unfortunately, I think when all is said and done, this is really going to look like January to July as we melt a lot of that anomalous, highly above normal snowpack that's still sitting up there in the Sierra Nevadas. It's sobering to think we've already reached billion-dollar disaster territory just in terms of the number of acres flooded, erosion, things of that nature. And unfortunately, I think it's only going to get worse as we go forward just with these high temperatures. I will say there is some, I'll just kind of spoil the forecast, the long-range forecast. There's some moderation in those temperatures as we look further out into the extended forecast. But nonetheless, that snowmelt will continue. It's late May. It's early June. We've really run out of the opportunities to get colder weather back into California and the Sierra Nevadas. So that snow will be melting. It's just a matter of how quickly it comes, trying to reduce the chance of it coming down the slopes all at once. If we look at temperature anomalies summed up over the next 7 days across the West, it's that story we just looked at. Warm for most folks, aside from maybe eastern Arizona and Washington and Oregon on Sunday and Monday. If we look at the jet stream forecast, this gives us an idea of what we might be looking at kind of that week plus beyond. I'll make it valid as of this evening. We'll just kind of walk through the big drivers of our weather. We look at the jet stream typically to give us a clue as to what those big pattern drivers are going to be going forward. Valid as of Wednesday evening here. Here's this big ridge in that jet stream here helping to build in that warmth across the Pacific Northwest, across British Columbia, Alberta, up in Canada, increasing those high temperatures across California, Oregon, and Washington as well. I'll make this color a bit more visible on the map here. If I take this forecast out into the future, you will notice one thing here, an upper level low, week 1 spinning just to the south of Arizona and California. That's helping to direct some of this tropical moisture up into eastern Arizona, New Mexico, parts of southern Utah, Colorado, really the upper Colorado, or I would say maybe middle Colorado river basin there. That's helping to promote that precip that we saw in the forecast there. We still see that upper level region situated across Idaho, Washington, Montana. So I take this into Saturday and Sunday. Remember those temperatures, those high temperatures started to shift east a bit through the forecast period. Well, that's because that upper level ridge is now shifting east, centered really over the Snake River Valley and Idaho, or even Montana at this point, late Saturday into Sunday. So that's pushing those temperatures east. And then Sunday evening, here's that next weather maker coming into Washington, parts of Oregon, British Columbia. A fairly weak system, not expecting, like I said, significant precip out of this, but a cold front and a temperature shift. So if you're getting tired of the warm temperatures in the Pacific Northwest, we do have some good news as we have a temperature shift on the way at the end of the weekend, but not a big change to the south of that. If I take this through next week, you will notice one feature toward the bottom of this map, that subtropical jet stream. The subtropical jet is the southernmost jet stream, at least on this map, comes out of the subtropics down here. Here's our polar jet, which in the summer gets retreated north up into Canada. But the subtropical jet inching further in to parts of the desert Southwest, that's only going to reinforce that pattern we saw with more precipitation coming in to areas in Arizona and New Mexico, really the Four Corners states, as a result of this jet stream funneling tropical moisture into the area. And if it inches further north, it can even bring some precipitation into California, maybe the central California coast, sometimes the Central Valley, or even Southern California, just in proximity to that jet stream and the moisture flux that it's bringing in. This is looking Wednesday, May 24th. I'll take this out a bit further. You'll notice not a huge change in the pattern. We kind of have this very weak ridging to the north, kind of still situated over the Pacific Northwest. Subtropical jet to the south. It makes me think we're going to see precip in this area here, potentially some light precip getting into parts of California. Generally warmer or more seasonal temperatures here, just despite this weak ridge. Do see something of a very weak trough situated over the Intermountain West here that could help to promote some of those more afternoon thunderstorm chances across the Intermountain West, perhaps the Snake River Valley, western Nevada, eastern Oregon. But again, depending on who lucks out, who doesn't, not a significant widespread precipitation maker. And this forecast, this jet stream forecast here from the GFS Ensemble, is all the way out May 27th. We're a week plus beyond here. Don't want to put too much weight into a forecast when we're talking about, a 10 to 15 day lead time. Nonetheless, let's jump over and look at the Climate Prediction Center to see what their forecast suggests for next week. If we look at temperatures, generally shifting east with those highest temperatures, you'll notice that we had those hot temperatures up in Canada, warm temperatures this past week in the Pacific Northwest, warm temperatures today, Wednesday and Thursday, but by the weekend shifting toward the east, and we see that shift continue into next week, May 23rd through May 27th, but still seeing lingering warmth across the western region. An area that won't see as much warmth is the area that's more likely to receive some of that anomalous precip coming out of that subtropical jet, spinning up into the Four Corners states. So that's where we're expecting that precip to focus on here. We talked about this kind of phenomenon earlier, how it's harder to get precipitation into the lower Colorado River Valley, just situated at those lower elevations, but nonetheless can't rule out a rogue thunderstorm sneaking over along an outflow boundary, and suddenly you're looking at a severe thunderstorm warning on a Yuma, Arizona afternoon, say May 25th. We'll keep an eye on those chances just as a result of some proximity thunderstorms in the area late next week. If we go even beyond that, into the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, not a big change for the last week of May. And I think we're not seeing a big change in the forecast right now because we're still in something of atmospheric blocking. And we've talked about this before, where the jet stream can get situated in a pattern that tends to get stuck or blocked up. That's why we call it atmospheric blocking. So we still see general warmth across the west, particularly on the northern half of the western region, and this arc of precipitation coming up along that subtropical jet into the Four Corners area, with perhaps some light precip chances in central Southern California, and those afternoon storm and shower chances across southern Idaho, Nevada, and Utah, but again, not a significant widespread precipitation maker here at the end of May. That atmospheric blocking we talked about, I think we can see some of that here in the Madden-Julian Oscillation, or the MJO, a convective phenomenon out of the equator regions of the world that we can use to get a clue in terms of that long-range forecast here. As it came across Indonesia, it rapidly moved into the Western Pacific. If you go to back a few videos or so, I mentioned, perhaps incorrectly, that just how quickly it was moving, it was likely to go through phase 6, 7, and 8. And if it did that, could help induce a pattern change out west, bringing in cooler temperatures and perhaps a more significant precipitation. But really, that didn't occur. Not exactly how I thought it did. You'll notice that as we reached May 10th, that's what that 10 means there, we really started to slow down the MJO. It stalled in phase 6, stalled in phase 7, and I think that helped to block up the pattern and kind of got us stuck in this warm north, more seasonal, cooler, a bit wetter toward the south, or at least parts of the desert southwest. If we jump over and look at the 30-day forecast from the ECMWF weeklies that came out, we see that same kind of pattern even all the way out through the first half of June. And what I mean by that same pattern, drier to the north, warmer to the north, not seeing a big precipitation signal here. Perhaps some of those afternoon shower storm chances in the parts of the Intermountain West and the middle Colorado River Valley, and that precip getting into parts of eastern Arizona, perhaps shifting even further east into the forecast into New Mexico. But still kind of a similar pattern. I think that's just a result of the atmosphere being blocked up, not wanting to change even as we enter June. Temperatures over that same time period, we talked about this earlier, warm to the north, cooler, more seasonal to the south, just as a result of that precipitation moving in here. A similar pattern to what we were just talking about even in the 7-day forecast. This is looking all the way out the 30 days, ending on June 20th. Another reinforcer here of this pattern we've seen lately, if we look over at the sea surface temperature anomalies, we often look at these to get an idea of the long-range weather forecast patterns. We've been talking this year about negative PDO. And negative PDO is this cooler ocean water off the southern coast of Alaska, west coast of Canada, and the west coast of the United States. That negative PDO has been weakening, particularly in the northern half of that region. You'll notice these warm temperatures here now. If we go back to a few weeks ago, this was all cold. So these waters have been warming up. That has allowed that warmth to build into Canada, the Pacific Northwest, those wildfires we talked about, the hazy, smoke-filled sky that's right out my window right now, if I could turn the camera toward it. Now, I will say there's something of a chicken and egg to this, and I said that the warming ocean temperatures help to cause the warming surface temperatures, but it goes back and forth. The warm temperatures that built into the area actually helped warm up the ocean temperatures, and it's not clear to this meteorologist, at least still in a kind of an ongoing area of research, which kind of precipitates that change, no pun intended. Where we do see cold waters continuing as part of that negative PDO is on the southern end, and the jet stream, that subtropical jet stream, in particular we talked about earlier, is really fed or influenced or strengthened by temperature differences below it in the atmosphere. So where we have these warm waters developing in the equatorial Pacific, that's our strengthening El Nino, by the way. These cold waters here just to the north, this negative PDO is helping to strengthen that subtropical jet into the southern United States, connecting to that higher precipitation forecast we just walked through for parts of Arizona, New Mexico, the Four Corners, and perhaps even parts of California. as we get later into that 2-week forecast time period. So all these things are connected, and as we kind of put this story together, that's kind of the challenge for us as meteorologists and for those of us affected by the weather in our industry, our jobs to kind of put that story together to see where we're going long-term across the summer, even looking out long-term into 23-24 water year. We do see the strengthening El Nino. It's not technically an El Nino yet, but certainly well on its way at this point. Probabilities for entering official El Nino status this summer are approaching 90%, perhaps even higher than that now here as of Wednesday, May 17th. And we can see it. These waters are warming up. Warm waters in the Central Pacific, once they reach that threshold, become officially an El Nino. And we do think that'll work to erode the remnants of this negative PDO as well. Warmer ocean waters, El Nino tends to weaken the desert southwest monsoon. The subtropical jet stream disrupts that monsoon circulation that typically develops across the western U.S. in summer. Now, that's kind of confusing because the forecast, at least in the near term, we just talked about wet conditions in the desert southwest. That could translate later in the forecast. I'm talking July, August, September, when our monsoon season really starts in earnest. We could see weaker precipitation in the lower Colorado River Valley, even east across the desert southwest, as a result of that El Nino, what could be a very strong El Nino if some of these forecasts verify. The second big impact we've talked about numerous times this spring is that if we hang on to that El Nino, and if it's as strong as advertised, it's likely to last through next winter, we could see that subtropical jet we just talked about help to bring precip into California, parts of Arizona, maybe even the Sierra Nevadas next water year, which would double up 2 good water years in a row. Certainly, I think we'd take that, barring any big flooding issues or landslide issues, if we could improve the water situation in California 2 years in a row. That's where the forecast is today. Thank you for watching.